Yes, welcome into Sports Bit. Betting Insight today, Thursday, December 22nd. Paulie and Teddy, big game breakdown. The doubleheader on TNT. We'll get to the late game, the Spurs and the Clippers. And then it's time for the NFL on Christmas Eve. Vikings against the Packers. Bengals Saturday night on the road to take on the Texans. Also the Colts and the Raiders. And we look to stay red hot with the play of the day. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. How about a bad beat? BYU up 17. First half played in a quagmire in San Diego. Wyoming in through the back door, Teddy.
Yeah. I mean, if it's raining in Vegas, you know that it's probably raining in Southern California. That was the case last night. And I mean, BYU in control of that game. And what did we say on Sportsbet? If the Cowboys can't run, they can't win. And BYU, they have about twice as many yards per carry as Wyoming did last night. But let's give the Cowboys some credit. That was a feisty team all year. They're down 17, nasty conditions, not a nice night. All of a sudden, they're chucking the ball around the field. Tanner Gentry, not one, but two touchdown catches in the fourth quarter as the Cowboys come through the back door. Tough beat if you had the Cougs.
All right, plenty of bad bets in the association. The Pistons again after the players' meeting, which didn't go well because they came out and got embarrassed against the Bulls. Van Gundy said it was disgusting. You talked about, Teddy, problems since Reggie Jackson's come back. Didn't pass the ball in one of the games in the first half. They lose at home to Memphis.
No, they didn't just lose. I mean, they got slapped around at home by Memphis. I mean, the Grizz, and remember, not just Memphis playing on the second night of back-to-backs. Memphis, who hadn't won a game since Mike Conley got back in the lineup. There are problems in Detroit. And the more I thought about that quote, the quote from Marcus Morris, and we was talking to reporters after that players-only meeting, where Morris was saying basically, well, I talked. I talked a lot. And then, the next game against the Bulls, they're down 35 at halftime. And then last night they lose to Memphis badly at home. There are problems in Detroit right now. This is a team with a giant red flag. And the markets didn't notice last night. There was money on Detroit last night. I don't know if we'll see money on Detroit next time.
Yep, bad bet. Bulls lose at home again.
Yeah, and you know what? So we did the deep dive yesterday with the power rating risers and fallers, and there were two teams that I thought about using, and I didn't use either one, and they both ended up being real good bets on Wednesday. One of them being the Washington Wizards. The Wizards are playing much better of late. They should have been on my risers list in the deep dive last night, but Chicago, they're playing once every 4 games they're showing up. I don't like the chemistry in Chicago any more than I like it in Detroit right now.
Yeah, and another bad bet, the Blazers at home. They were down huge in that game against the Mavericks. What happened?
When you have Portland's backcourt, you can shoot your way back into games. But when you have Portland's defense, you have very little chance of covering point spreads as a favorite. and didn't get the money last night. And Dallas is another team that I think has legit bet-on potential last night. Another team that I'm like, I probably should have used them in the deep dive yesterday. Their backcourt is healthy for the first time all year, and it's veterans. J.J. Barea and Wesley Matthews, Darren Williams, and Devin Harris. That's 4 savvy vets in the backcourt, and they're saying all the right things about not giving up on their season and doing what they can do to get back into things. Maybe some money to be made riding Dallas over the next couple of weeks.
Yep, one from college. Syracuse embarrassed at home. It was the worst home loss for Boeheim. They were run out against St. John's. And here's a horrible beat. The Jazz and Jazz money line up 20 against Sacramento. And then they went to sleep. And Sacramento with a huge road win trying to get that 8th seed in the West.
Yeah, I keep talking about all these bad beat games that I seem to be on for whatever reason. And here's another one. I got Utah in my pocket. They're up 20. What's it, 66-46? You blink, and all of a sudden it's like a 7-point game. And then the Kings went on another run late in the fourth to steal it. Their bench was raining threes. I mean, Anthony Tolliver, Garrett Temple, Aaron Aflalo, all hitting multiple three-pointers. And then, the Jazz, without their starting back with Rodney Hood, a late scratch. Dante Exum didn't play either. The Marcus didn't care. Utah bet up from -7 to -8. I had a good number in that game. It shows how much good that did me.
All right, so
rip up that ticket.
Yep, some NFL tidbits. Only 2 weeks left. The Patriots, an NFL best 11-3 against the spread. No surprise here, the worst, the Browns. And that's why we laughed that it's so-called professional money every week on Cleveland. Browns 2-12 ATS. 49ers 2-11-1 ATS. 1-15 ATS combined the last 8 games, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, and I'm very guilty of this, as a handicapper, it's probably my biggest weakness. I overthink things. You want to keep things simple? Real easy. Bet on good teams, bet on hot teams. Bet against bad teams, bet against cold teams. And when you do that, if you did that in the NFL this year, you made money all year. I mean, obviously, when you talk about the Browns and the 49ers were horrible bets all year. The Jaguars were a bad bet all year. The LA Rams, after their hot September, they were a bad bet all year. And the good teams, like New England, they were moneymakers. You know, by and large, keep it simple. Kiss, man. And if you did kiss in the NFL, you made money. And kudos to you.
Yeah, Arizona 4-10 ATS as well. One of the worst teams as far as the total teams. Atlanta leads the way, 12-2 to the over. Redskins also 11-3 to the over. We talked about this earlier in the week with the preview. The Giants 11-3 to the under. Also the Lions 10-4 to the under. The Lions have played 8 straight unders.
Yeah, the Lions have played 8 straight unders. The Giants have played 6 straight unders. Of course, they played, last week. Did we have the under in that game, Paulie?
Oh, yeah.
I think we did.
Yes. All right. We gave that out. We no way that was points are going to be scored in that one. Up next, big game breakdown. We start in the association with the Spurs and the Clippers, and then the Lambeau with the Packers and the Vikings coming up. Big game breakdown on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Go to SBROdds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
All right, back on SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Paulie and Teddy, before we get to big game breakdown, how about the 2017 SBR Poker Bash? $5,000 in cash, sponsored by UWager. No limit Texas Hold'em free roll at the Hard Rock Hotel, Butacano, Dominican Republic. Hard Rock Poker Room, Sunday, February 5th, 2017. Max 50 people. The first 36 SBR posters to show up get seated immediately. Bring your SBR name tag. $5,000 cold hard cash. The prize pool, first place, $2,000. The link's up there as well. Check it out and try to win some free money as they're putting on a great poker gig and a chance to win free money, which everyone likes with SBR.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the downside is that you have to be there. The upside is that you get to be there. But obviously it's in the Dominican Republic. But if you want to be in that poker tournament, you do have to sign up now. You can check out all the details in the SBR posting forum.
Excellent. Starting the NBA, the doubleheader on TNT, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Spurs won, 207 the total against the Clippers. Spurs 15-1 on the road. And in the first meeting, it was 116-92. The Clippers buried the Spurs on the road. Blake had 28 in that game, but he's out for an extended period of time, and the Clippers are used to playing without Griffin. So far, so good. Got the win against the Nuggets the other night.
Yeah, I mean, without Blake, we are talking about a different LA Clippers team. But the markets certainly respect the fact that Griffin missed an extended stretch last year. He missed an extended stretch the year before. This is a Clippers team that has been playing and winning without Blake Griffin on a fairly consistent basis in recent seasons. That being said, it doesn't make it any easier going up against a Spurs team that, showed a lot of guts and moxie for a December road game in their come-from-behind win against Houston the other night.
The Spurs trailed by 13 points with less than 4.5 minutes left, and entering Tuesday, teams behind by 13 points or more in that situation owned a record of 1,388 over the past 3 seasons, according to ESPN Stats and Info. Not a typo. And the only team to have notched a win in that scenario earlier in the season, the Rockets, did it on the road against the T-Wolves.
Yeah, they did it just last week. We talked about it. That was a bad beat. Ironically, and I don't know if it's ironic, when something happens one every 1,388 times, and then it happens again the following week, and I have both of those teams in my pocket, that's kind of weird, is all I'm saying. But
yeah, right.
Look at the quote from Greg Popovich talking about the Spurs' resilience. They showed some toughness mentally as well as physically. We went down there at the end, and I think the deficit was 12 at one point. We could have just cashed it in, but they just kept working. The defense got a little better. The physicality got better. We got a break or two, made a couple of shots, but they never hung their heads. They just kept on pushing because in this game, it really is 48 minutes. Anything can happen in an NBA game. It takes forever. That being said, Manu Ginobili hit a bunch of key shots. He probably hit his best game of the year for San Antonio in the comeback win over Houston. He will be sitting this game as well as the next game on the Spurs road trip.
You know, a lot of these wins that they've had over the past couple of years when he's out have been against bad teams. Now it's the Spurs and it's revenge mode. And how about that road record? I can't get enough of that 15-1.
Yeah, -1. The price is cheap.
Yeah. All right. NFL now. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Christmas Eve. Packers at home against the Vikings. Green Bay 6.5, 43 the total. Adrian Peterson, who knows if he'll go. Still bothered. Now it's a groin injury, and he didn't do much in the loss against the Colts. Only 6 carries. Had the fumble as well, and I don't know what I'm going to get out of this Minnesota team because that thing was over early. We ran it down on Monday's show. Blown out, listless performance in the first half. Embarrassed against the Colts. And afterwards, Zimmer said nobody was fighting. I want fighters. I don't know what's going to happen Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, well, let's start with this, Paulie, the basic premise. Christmas Eve, all right? As fans, we don't really like it. As bettors, we don't really like it. It's time that nobody tends to want to spend, well, shouldn't say nobody, but, you know, there are other things that people want to be doing, including the players themselves. You've got commitments before the game. You've got commitments to after the game. And generally, over the long term, I've found that over the holidays, I like the road teams more than the home teams. The home teams, all they got to do is drive home after the game. They got all the distractions. The road team, they're there the night before. There's some bonding together on the holidays. And in general, those are the type of teams I want to look for. But I've got my questions about Minnesota. I mean, you talked about Adrian Peterson. You know, he was 100% healthy, but it doesn't matter. AP or no AP, as I've told you 500 times this season, Paul Howard.
Oh, it matters. It matters.
It doesn't matter because the offensive line stinks. And they used their 7th different offensive lineup combination in 14 games last week, and that one stunk too. And they opened the game, and they had a pair of 3-and-outs and a 4-play drive that ended with a punt, and then Peterson, turnover the next 2 possessions. It's ball game. And Peterson's quote, it's about every guy doing their job and being productive when those opportunities come in the run game. I feel like there were some things I could have done better. I'm sure the offensive line feels the same, and passing the ball as well. We've been hearing the same story all year from this Vikings offense, Paulie, but my bigger concern right now for Minnesota is on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, and they might pack it in, too, if they fall behind early. Packers have got the money 3 weeks in a row after the 4-game losing streak. Again, kudos to Rodgers. We thought he was nuts when they were talking about running the table. We actually had him twice on the show as winners. But it's been the emergence of Ty Montgomery, who we've been telling you about here on SportsBit. He was enormous running the ball in the win against Chicago. Who knew he could just hand off to this guy and he could be 160 rushing yards?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Packers, 451 yards in that game, 7.8 yards per play. They did hang 30 in that contest against a fairly weak defense. And, of course, Montgomery with 16 carries, 162 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's getting short yardage touchdowns. 156 of his 162 rushing yards came after contact. We think of him, converted wide receiver. He's running between the tackles and getting tough yards and breaking tackles, which is something that's kind of impressive. But, I mean, we're kind of all over the map with this preview. Let me get back to the Vikings defense, Bally. This defense allowed 21 first downs in the first half last week. 3 touchdown drives in the game of 88 yards or more against Andrew Luck. It was a defense that fought all year, and all of a sudden they ran into a hot quarterback. They didn't show. Well, Aaron Rodgers has a tendency to be a pretty hot quarterback at this time of the year, regardless of the Mike Zimmer quote that you're talking about. Quote, they're doing a few new things in the running game. The last 5 weeks, I think they've had more 20-yard completions in the league because they're running the ball better. Know how good Aaron Rodgers is when he gets opportunities to throw it down the field. So Zimmer's worried about Minnesota's defense. I'm worried about Minnesota's defense. We're going to get back to this game when it comes to play of the daytime.
Yes, and Jordy Nelson been huge for the Packers the last 3 weeks as well. Up next, we continue in the NFL. The Colts hit the road to take on the Raiders, and Saturday night on NFL Network, Savage gets the start. Texans at home against the Bengals, plus the play of the day on SportsBit. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBit, Betting Insight today. Big game breakdown continues. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Late game Saturday afternoon. Colts and the Raiders from Oakland. Raiders 3.5, 53 the total. How about the Colts offense last week? May have played the best game of the season based on venue and opponent. On 92 and 91-yard drives for a touchdown on back-to-back possessions. They had an 88-yard drive later on. The first half, they ran 47 plays to 11. What a performance by the Colts. Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the talk is Andrew Luck, Andrew Luck, Andrew Luck. The key was A, the play of the offensive line, and B, the fact they ran the football first. Here's a quote from Robert Turbin running the football. It opens up those big plays. Now you have the safeties looking in the backfield, trying to stop the run. We have some speedy receivers, and it's going to open it up for them. It makes it easier on Andrew and the offensive line when it comes to pass protection. Now that defense isn't just bowing back and just attacking. They have to stop and think. They might run this thing. And when Indy runs the football, well, Oakland's defense has been vulnerable in a number of different areas, but they've been decent stopping the run. Not spectacular, but that Colts offensive line, which has been a sieve all year, it's not a sieve right now. And the quotes leading up to the game at Minnesota were very positive. You look at Andrew Luck, his uniform was clean last week, and it's been clean the last couple of weeks. The first 8 weeks of the season, they gave up, I think, 31 sacks. They've only given up 9 since. None last week. So that's a positive sign for that Indy offense, an offense that still has a lot of potency, Paulie.
And the Raiders, the offensive line with the Pro Bowlers, excellent job all season. They've been running the ball well. Murray was great last week against the Chargers. I'm concerned about the passing attack because it's really fallen off since Carr got hurt. He's going every play out of the shotgun. Cooper only had 1 catch last week. We talked about the red zone issues on Monday's show, but this has got to stop. They have outscored their opponents 42-0 in the final 3 minutes of play. Unbelievable.
Well, why's that got to stop?
That can't continue. That can't continue.
Well, what it's saying, when you're outscoring your opponents 42-0 over the last 3 minutes of regulation, okay, that's saying 2 things. 1, the offense is legit. They can make plays during crunch time. They can win games during crunch time. It also saying that the D, maybe for the first time, they're getting stops when it matters most. Statistically, it's a mediocre defense. When you watch them, you see holes and vulnerabilities. But during crunch time, with the game on the line, that defense has stepped up again and again and again this season. That's why Oakland is where they are right now. You talk about Carr and the issues on the offense. I mean, the last 2 games, the offense hasn't worked. They went to Kansas City on a short week, and the Chiefs really shut them down. Last week against San Diego, there was a ton of missed chances and missed opportunities and red zone failures and drop passes and slightly off. Now they're back home. They're going up against the weakest defense of the 3. You look at Indy's defensive numbers on the road. Indy's been winning games on the road. Their defensive numbers against the good offenses haven't been pretty by any stretch of the imagination. No surprise here if this game turns into something of a shootout.
I don't like the spot at all for the Raiders. They finally get in the playoffs for the first time since 2002. Everyone's kissing their ass, and now they're back in control of the 2 seed and the division. Well, I don't like it.
Sure, and plus, Oakland's got all the Pro Bowls. The teams that don't get the Pro Bowl, the teams that get snubbed, those are the guys that are hungry this week. The Saints, after everyone gets snubbed and Drew Brees gets passed over in favor of some rookie from Dallas that everyone's talking about. So Oakland, they lead the AFC in Pro Bowl berths. They get the left tackle, Donald Penn. They get the left guard, Kelechi Osemele. And they got the center, Rodney Hudson, all selected for the AFC. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not in love with the spot for Oakland, too. This is not one of the games I'll be laying points with this week.
All right, one more. NFL Network, Saturday night. Bengals take on the Texans. Texans at home won, 41 the total. The players saying the right things about how they liked how Savage played when he got in there, spread it around. Hopkins had 8 catches, but all they needed the entire year was adequate play from Osweiler at the quarterback position. They couldn't get it. They had to make the switch. But the key, and they're 6-1 at home this year, the Texans, the key has been the defense, Teddy.
Well, yeah, they're first in total defense. They only give up, 306 yards per game. They're second in passing defense, only giving up 203 yards per game. And again, I don't worry too much about the aggregate stats. I definitely like the advanced metric stats when I'm talking about offensive and defensive numbers. But even without, they've been without J.J. Watt. They've been without the cornerback Kevin Johnson. They've been out Merciless, the outside linebacker, and John Simon. They've suffered a number of injuries, and that defense has been solid all year long. The defensive end, Antonio Smith, the quote, talking about how they're the number 1 D. Every defense wants to be the number one defense. For us to climb in the ranks the way we have, we've put a lot of dedicated work in. It's always a good sign, an affirmation of, okay, the work I'm putting in is good for something. We have fun. I don't even think we've reached our peak. We're constantly getting better and wiser on how to work in the frame of our defense.
Now here we go again. I hate the spot for the Bengals. They're off the huge emotional game against the Steelers where they blew a 17-3 lead. Marvin Lewis, my thought is to win these last 2 football games with the best players we can put out there to play. That's what we owe to everybody. This isn't junior high school. We got to play to win the game. That's what it's for. We owe it to that. We owe it to everybody. The guys out here put their neck on the line all the time, end quote. As we tape this Thursday morning, A.J. Green hasn't practiced all week. Perfect hasn't practiced all week as well.
Yeah, I mean, those are 2 key injuries. Obviously, there's some thought that A.J. Green could be back. Don't know if he's going to be back. It's a big question mark. And Perfect and Vincent Ray also very questionable for this weekend. Now, I actually believe Marvin Lewis's quote.
Yeah.
All right. There are a number of teams, the veteran teams, that I have big question marks. The teams that have been in the playoffs in recent years and aren't going to the playoffs this year. In general, those teams tend to be bad bets when it comes to Week 16, Week 17, non-divisional road games, coming off a tough divisional game. You know, that tends to be no-show. But one thing that's been very consistent in the regular season during the Marvin Lewis tenure, you know, his teams don't quit. They're going to show up. If you're betting Houston, you're betting Houston because you believe in Tom Savage and you believe in the Texans' momentum, not because you think that since he's going to no-show here. I'm not getting that vibe from the Bengals, and I kind of wish I was.
Okay, very good there. Money time, play of the day. 39-21 on the football season. We've had them 2 times already, and we won both times. Let's go back to the well. Green Bay, betting number 112, laying 6.5 at home against the Vikings. 6 of the 8 wins by a touchdown or more. They're on a roll. And they fell asleep last week, up 17 against the Bears. Look for a huge effort at home by the Packers. They can feel and taste the playoffs. That's our play today, 112, Green Bay minus the 6.5. More NFL coming up Friday. Plenty of NFL to get to with a great doubleheader on Christmas Day. We'll get to all that coming up on the weekend preview edition. And thanks for checking out SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.